Record 1 second.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's the last class until after Tishrei. So the last class we did Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Today we're going to learn the dinim of Sukkot. We're going to go through, again, Sukkot you can learn a lifetime, but we're going to go through basic laws that you need to know very briefly about building a sukkah, and then the actual laws of Yom Tov itself. The minimal size of a sukkah has to be at least 3 walls. Our custom is to have 4 walls. It's better to have halachically 4 walls, but minimal responsibility of a sukkah is 3 solid walls. The minimal size of a sukkah is 28 inches by 28 inches. The minimum height of a sukkah is 40 inches. It's not that big, by the way. 40 inches by 28 and 28, but by 28 by 28. It's very important that it's better, again, our custom is to have 4 walls, but if, let's say, it's a question of 3 proper walls or 4, half walls, it's better to do 3 proper walls, halacha says. Now, when you build a sukkah, okay, it cannot be under any overhangs. It cannot be under trees. It cannot be under overhangs. It cannot be under anything like that. It has to be under the sky. It's number 1. Number 2, when you build a sukkah, you have to make sure that the walls of the sukkah go within 9 inches of the ground. If the walls of the sukkah are above 9 inches from the ground, the sukkah is not kosher. Okay? Now, once you have a proper wall of a sukkah, once you have a wall of a sukkah that is, 10 tfachim 40 inches high, then it's, even if the schach on top doesn't hit the wall, it would still be kosher. In other words, I don't know if you can see this, but let's say this is the wall of the sukkah, okay? I'll give you a simple example. You can have a canvas sukkah. So you can have a 10-foot frame, 10 foot all around, and you can have an 8-foot canvas. Now, if I hang the 8-foot canvas from the top, it's going to be short 2 feet to the floor. That would not be a kosher sukkah. But if I put the canvas on the floor, and it's 8 feet high, and there's 2 feet empty space between the wall and the schach, the sukkah will be kosher. Because halachically, once you have a proper wall, halachically the wall keeps going up to the sky. It's an imaginary halachic wall that keeps going to the sky. So let's say this is the wall, and this is the schach, okay, but the schach is here, okay? But if the wall would be continue going up, it would hit the schach, so that sukkah is kosher. But if it would be this way, that the wall is not touching the ground, then it would not be a kosher sukkah. Okay? The schach also has to come within 9 inches of the wall. That means, let's say you have a sukkah, but the schach is not going all the way towards the wall. It's like a foot off. Okay? It's not touching the schach. You don't have enough schach. It's not touching the wall. It's not kosher. It has to be within 9 inches of the wall. Okay? If it's 9 inches of the wall, then it's considered halachically connected. That's why if it's within 9 inches of the floor, halachically it's considered as if it's connected to the ground. Okay? So that's very important dinim. When you build a sukkah, you have to know that the wall has to come within 9 inches of the ground. Upwards, as long as you have a proper 40-inch wall, even if the schach is not touching the wall on top, as long as if the wall would keep going up, it would hit this wall, it would hit the schach, then it's fine. Many times you have a sukkah, again, there's millions of dinim in the sukkah, okay? Many times you have a sukkah that you want to use the house wall as one of the walls, okay? The problem is, from the house, there's an overhang. Either it's the second floor is protruding, right? So this empty space right outside the house is really under an overhang. So the din is as follows. If that overhang is less than 6 feet wide, that means, let's say, it's 4 feet protruding from the house, the overhang is 4 feet, I can put schach all over the sukkah, and this wall is counted as one of the walls of the sukkah. If the overhang, not if there's no overhang, if there's no overhang, the wall has to be within 9 inches of the schach. But if there's an overhang, which is not kosher sukkah, underneath it, but as long as it's within 6 feet of that wall of the house, then the sukkah is kosher. You can't sit under that part, but it could be counted as a wall, that this will be a wall for one of the 3 walls or 4 walls of the sukkah. Okay? This is all what's called halacha Meshem Sinai. There's a lot of laws concerning walls. This halacha has to be called dofen akuma. Dofen akuma means a crooked wall. But basically what happens is, if I have an overhang less than 6 feet over the wall, it's like the wall moved to the end. And therefore the wall is actually touching the schach itself. Okay, but this is very common cases, because a lot of times people they want to use their house wall as a wall, but there's protruding, there's a little balcony on top of it or whatever it may be. But you have to be careful. You can't make a sukkah under a balcony, under another balcony. You cannot make a sukkah under trees. I mean, all these things, you have to be very careful when you make a sukkah, that it should be done properly, in a proper way of building a sukkah. That's issue number 1 with the walls. Now, another very important din is the schach. The walls don't matter who puts up the walls. The schach should be put up by a Jew. Okay? The schach, the covering of the sukkah, must be put up by a Jew. But the B'diavad, it might be kosher, but that's not the way we build a sukkah. The schach, now what happens, let's say your friend who's not Jewish did you a favor, he put up your whole sukkah. So what you could do is take a broom and go inside the sukkah, and with the broom pick up the schach all over the place. Just pick it up with the broom and put it back down. So then it's like you did the schach. So then it would be fine. Another very important din when building a sukkah, and this could be very possible by canvas sukkahs, that people will make another mistake. First, you have to put up the walls, and then the schach. If you put out, so you have a frame, and you put on the schach first, and then you build the walls, it's not kosher. It's not kosher. Because the Torah says you have to make a sukkah. The sukkah is primarily the schach, the branches on top of whatever you're using. So that has to be, because otherwise you have the schach, and then it's not a kosher sukkah, and all of a sudden, by putting on the walls, the sukkah is being made, but you didn't put up the schach, because the schach has to be put up after the walls are up, then you are making the sukkah, and then the sukkah would be kosher. Because especially people that have canvas frames, I know a lot of times that happens. People call about this, that they put up this, you have the frame, and say, it's okay, I'm going to put up the schach, and then we'll get the canvas, and we'll put on the canvas. If you do that, it's not going to be a kosher sukkah. Okay, that's as far as, in a nutshell, the concept of building, of constructing the sukkah. Now let's get into the actual dinim of sukkah. Okay. Now, as far as the Yom Tov of Sukkot is concerned, again, it's this year it's Tuesday and Wednesday, Monday night, Tuesday and Wednesday. The mitzvah of eating in a sukkah applies to men. Women, per se, are not obligated in the mitzvah of Sukkah. It's a mitzvah connected to time. They're not obligated in any mitzvah connected to time. There are a few exceptions, like Kiddush Friday night. Women are obligated in eating matzah. The night of Pesach, they're obligated. Purim, Chanukah, those things are obligated, but there are exceptions to the rule. Generally speaking, the Gemara learns out, a mitzvah that's bound and connected to time, women don't have to do. So technically, women don't have to eat in the sukkah. They don't have men have a mitzvah that in the first night they must eat in the sukkah. Second night they must eat in the sukkah. Women don't have that obligation. Nevertheless, the halacha is, if you're Ashkenazic, that a woman, when she does a mitzvah she's not obligated in, she is allowed to make a bracha. Like a woman is not obligated to do the bracha on lulav and esrog. But if she wants to do the mitzvah, she can make the bracha, on the tilas lulav. If she wants to eat in the sukkah, she's allowed to make a bracha, even though she's not obligated. Now it's interesting, just for the record, the Sephardic community does not make a bracha, women do not make a bracha on any mitzvah connected to time. Any mitzvah that they're not obligated in, the Rambam, the Sephardic commentaries hold that they're not allowed to make a bracha. Why? Because the bracha is Asher Kedshanu b'mitzvayse v'tzivanu, that Hashem commanded us. They're not commanded. How can you make a bracha if you're not commanded? The Ashkenazic authorities, and that's why the Alter Rebbe also paskins, all Ashkenazim paskin like that v'tzivanu means collectively, not me particularly. Shekidshanu, that Hashem sanctified us with the mitzvahs, and He commanded us, which includes all Jews, even though she's not obligated per se in this particular mitzvah. But if she does the mitzvah, she does get reward. Not like somebody who's obligated, but like somebody who's not obligated to do a mitzvah. So therefore, women are not obligated to sit in the sukkah. Okay, now let's go through the actual mitzvahs of Yom Tif, and then if we have time, we'll go into things which are not as relevant. Number one, this year Erev Sukkot is Monday, like Rosh Hashanah, and Erev, the last days, is also Yom Tif, is Tuesday and Wednesday. So Monday, you're supposed to, it says in halacha, you're supposed to give a lot of tzedakah, number one. Number two, Erev Yom Tif, you should cut your hair and nails. Because if somebody cuts their nails Erev Yom Tif, like Monday, then if their nails get long, they can cut them during Chol HaMoed. If they did not cut their nails before Yom Tif, they are not allowed to cut their nails Chol HaMoed. Okay? You're not allowed to cut your nails on Chol HaMoed, only if you mamish cut them out of Yom Tif, then you can, otherwise, halacha says you were negligent. Why are you going into Yom Tif with long nails? You're supposed to cut them before Yom Tif. You didn't, so you can't cut them during Yom Tif either. Somebody who cut the nails before Yom Tif, what are they supposed to do? So then they would be allowed to cut. The same thing with hair. You're not allowed to cut hair during Chol HaMoed. I mean, if a woman has to go to mikveh, she can cut her hair during Chol HaMoed. And here's another interesting question. If somebody's kid's birthday is during Sukkot, are you allowed to do an upsharanish Chol HaMoed Sukkot? Are you allowed to cut his hair when he's 3 during Chol HaMoed Sukkot? So because normally Chol HaMoed, you're not allowed to cut your hair. I understand you, but we cut nails for Shabbos. I understand. But you can't cut nails during Chol HaMoed, even if it's for Shabbos. So, for instance, the Gemara says people that were not able to take a haircut before Yom Tif are allowed to take a haircut during Chol HaMoed. People that were able to take a haircut before Yom Tif, they are not allowed to take a haircut Chol HaMoed. And our sages say why in the Mishnah? Because we don't want people to go into Yom Tif. Believe it or not, according to halacha, long hair and long nails are called despicable in halacha. We don't want somebody, people before Yom Tov are busy. Chol Hamoed, they're much more lax in, they're not working, many people, they have much more time. So they say, you know what, I'm not going to take a haircut before Sukkot, I'll do it Chol Hamoed. Meanwhile, you're going into Yom Tov with long hair. So Chum said, no, you're not allowed to do it. What happens if somebody got out of jail during Chol Hamoed, and then they would be allowed to take a haircut because they couldn't do it before. So what happens at baby's birthday? If a baby's birthday was before Yom Tiv, let's say Erev Yom Tiv, you cannot give him an upshare in his Chol Hamoed because you're able to do it the day before Sukkot, do it Erev Yom Tiv. What happens though if the kid's birthday is in the middle of Yom Tiv or Chol Hamoed? So then the minig is he could do an upshare in his. Pesach not, because Pesach is not a problem of Chol Hamoed, it's a problem of Sfira. It's Sfira Sa'omer, we don't take haircuts. But the Chol Hamoed Sukkot, if a kid has an upshare, he's allowed to do an upshare on Chol Hamoed Sukkot. Okay, it's a mitzvah for men to go to the mikvah. To be. People should not eat a lot Monday afternoon, because Chazal say we want you to do the mitzvah of eating in the sukkah with enjoyment. If you're going to stuff yourself out of Yom Tiv, then when Yom Tiv comes, you're not going to be hungry enough to really enjoy the mitzvah of eating in the sukkah. So you're not supposed to eat a lot. As far as the men go, the men should actually prepare their lulav, and the lulav, taida dasim and aravis, they should actually prepare the lulav in the sukkah on Erev Yom Tiv. That's the proper way of doing it. Okay, now when it comes to the Yom Tif itself, okay, by the way, before Sukkot, practically speaking, you have to make sure the lights in the Sukkah are working, and you have to make sure that everything's working and everything's ready for the Yom Tif. A woman should ben shlicht, light the Shabbos candles, Yom Tif candles in the Sukkah, where you're eating. Okay? Yom Tif, by the way, Yom Tif, when you finish eating, even though the candles are still lit, you're allowed to carry the candlesticks back into the house. You don't want to leave them in the sukkah, they can get stolen or whatever. Yom Tif, they're not muktzah, because Yom Tif you're allowed to light candles. So Yom Tif, somebody after eating can bring the candle holder back to the house. Shabbos though, candle holders are muktzah. While the candles are lit, for sure you can't move them. So people should just be aware that if you have a very expensive candle holders, maybe for Shabbos Chol Hamoed, you should light a cheaper candle holder that you're going to be able to leave in the sukkah. You're not going to be able to bring it into the house. Okay, because it's muktzah and you can't do it. When a woman benches licht in the sukkah, they say the bracha lahad dekner shel Yom Tif, and again the bracha shachiyanu. Okay, another din is very important din. Yom Tif, Sukkot and Pesach for that matter. We learned out a lot of laws from Pesach and Sukkot and Pesach. Because the Torah uses the same word, 15th day of the month, and the Gemara learns out a lot of dinim. I'll give you an example. You're not allowed, normally Shabbos you can bring it early. Like summertime, people bring Shabbos in early. You can bring Yom Tif Sukkot in early, but you cannot eat in the sukkah before nightfall. There's a mitzvah, the sukkah has to be, you have to eat, fulfill the mitzvah of eating in the sukkah. It has to be after nightfall, which is approximately at least a half an hour after sundown. You can figure best thing would be like an hour after candle lighting. Now, how do we learn that you have to eat sukkah? It doesn't say only at night. So the Gemara says, by Pesach it says you have to eat the matzah balayla. By Pesach it says you have to eat the matzah at night. So we learn out Sukkot, just like Pesach is at night, so Sukkot is also at night. So therefore you have to make sure that you don't eat in the sukkah before nightfall, and if not, you didn't do the mitzvah and you made a bracha in vain. Ideally, the Torah says, Sukkot is teishvu ke'ein taduru, you live in the sukkah like you live in the house. Many people, many or from people, will even sleep in the sukkah. Chabad is very interesting. We don't sleep in the sukkah at all. because the Mittel Rebbe, the second Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe's son said, how can you sleep in Makif and Davina? Sukkah is such a holy thing, how can you sleep there? So Chabad minig is we don't sleep in the Sukkah, but Chabad custom, this doesn't apply to women, this applies to men who are obligated to mitzvah. We will not even drink a drop of water outside the Sukkah, even though halachically you could. We won't even drink a drop of water outside the Sukkah, even if it's pouring rain. But we don't sleep in the Sukkah. That's a Chabad thing of Kabbalah. Okay, now, you're not allowed to bring into the Sukkah, and people should be aware of this, you're not allowed to bring into the Sukkah disgusting things. So I could give you an example. You're not allowed to bring a garbage can into the Sukkah. It's disrespectful. The Sukkah is holy. You want to clear off the table, so it's easy. You bring the garbage can in, you just dump the stuff into the garbage can. According to halacha, it's forbidden to bring a garbage can or anything, the food pans or pots that get disgusting after, you serve the food. They have to be taken out of the sukkah. Okay? Ideally you should spend as much time in the sukkah as possible. Again, Chabad custom is that we do eat in the sukkah even if it rains. Women are, again, not obligated in the mitzvah of sukkah, but they could if they want. Kids should be trained to be eating in the sukkah, and so on. Now, as far as Yom Tov goes, by the way, I'm going to mention, first of all, the Kiddush on the first night of Sukkot. Okay? So again, LA time, Monday night, candle of Sukkot, candlelighting is 6:12. Okay? That's in LA time. Should be lit in the Sukkah, like we said. Now, when you make Kiddush in the Sukkah, there's a different order of, if you look in the Siddur, we'll say it clearly, there's a different order of the Kiddush, the first night of Sukkot and the second night of Sukkot. In other words, like this. We say Kiddush, Bar Piyah, it's not Friday night. So we say Bar Piyah Gafen, then the bracha of Kiddush, Asher Bacha Banu Mikolam. Then we say the bracha Leishe Vasuka, and then we say Shechianu. Second night, first Shechianu, and then Leishe Vasuka. But the first night, it says in our Siddur, we first make Leishe Vasuka and then Shechianu. Why? So it says, the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch, the reason is very simple. Building a sukkah itself is really a mitzvah. You don't make a bracha on it, but it's a mitzvah. So really we should make a shechianu when we build the sukkah. This is a new mitzvah that comes time to time. But the whole purpose of building the sukkah is to eat in the sukkah. So when we make a shechianu the first night of sukkahs, we have in mind, it's also not on the mitzvah of eating in the sukkah, but on the whole sukkah itself. So the first night we say Leishe Vasuka, and then the Shechianu should also go on the building of the sukkah, Leishe Vasuka. Second night we say Leishe Vasuka at the end. Now when the man make Kiddush, now if a woman is making Kiddush, she says like the man, Leishe Vasuka. What happens if the man is making Kiddush and the woman is not making Kiddush? So when does the woman make the bracha Leishe Vasuka? So the custom is that the women, or those men that are not making Kiddush, when they wash for Hameitzi, then they say, Hameitzi lachem min ha'aret, asher kidshon mitzvah tzvar leishe basukah. Baruch Hashem, then they make the bracha leishe basukah before they eat the challah. The first night of Sukkot, custom is we dip the challah into honey and also into salt. First into honey, and then if you want, you dip it also into salt. What food you should be serving the first night of, I don't give out private recipes, so I'm not going to tell you what you should be serving. Whatever you make is good. There is a mitzvah, by the way, according to halacha, to eat meat on Yom Tov. By the way, if somebody doesn't like meat, it's a different story. But halachically, there's really a mitzvah to have meat, not even chicken. According to many opinions, Yom Tov samachta b'chagecha, real simcha, ein simcha el b'basar, with meat. According to many opinions in halacha, it's actual meat, not chicken. But again, if people don't like meat, they definitely fulfill the obligation. They fulfill the obligation with chicken and things like that. Okay, so you spend time in the sukkah. It's a mitzvah to spend time in the sukkah. In the benching on sukkahs, you have to say Yalla v'Yaveh. Yom Tov, if you forget Yalla v'Yaveh in the benching, you have to repeat the benching. Chol Hamoed, you do not have to repeat the benching if you left out Chol Hamoed. In the Shmoneh Esrei, you do Chol Hamoed, but in benching, Yom Tov, if you left out Yalla v'Yaveh, you have to repeat the benching. If it's Chol Hamoed, you don't. What's the difference? It's a very simple difference to keep in mind. When there's an obligation to eat bread, and you left out Yalla v'Yaveh, then you have to rebench. But if there's no obligation to eat bread, like Chol Hamoed, there's no mitzvah to eat bread. There's no mitzvah to eat bread, Chol Hamoed. So therefore you have no mitzvah, it's good, you wash, you make halachic sukkah, we'll get into those dinim soon. So if you have an obligation to eat bread, then you have to make then you have to repeat Yalla v'Yaveh. Same thing we would say on Shabbos. Shabbos is a mitzvah to eat bread, challah. So by Shalosh Shudas, let's say you washed and you left out, let's say you don't have to repeat the benching. Why? Because by Shalosh Shudas there's no obligation to eat bread. So if again, whenever Rosh Chodesh, you don't repeat Yalla v'Yaveh in the benching if you missed it. Why? Because in Rosh Chodesh there's no mitzvah to eat bread. Yom Tov, there's a mitzvah to eat bread. There is one opinion that says women don't have the obligation, but we don't pass like that. And women also have an obligation to eat challah on the first night, on Yom Tov also, Yom Tov and Shabbos. Okay, we dipped the challah into honey we mentioned. Okay, now let's discuss when do I make a leishe basukah and when don't I make a leishe basukah. This applies now for the whole sukkahs. First 2 nights, by the way, you must eat challah or bread or matzah, whatever. You must make a leishe basukah. You have an obligation to eat bread and to make a leishe basukah. The rest of Yom Tov really also have an obligation to eat bread. But let's say Chol Hamoed. When do I make a leishe basukah? When don't I make a leishe basukah? So the rule is something that halacha says you must eat in the sukkah, then you make a leishe basukah. Something that halacha says technically you do not have to eat in the sukkah. You technically could, it's not the best thing, but you could eat it in the house, then you don't make a leishe basukah. What are those things that you make a leishe basukah on? The din is as follows: 2 ounces of cake and 2 ounces of bread. Besides the first night. The first night you make leishe basukah on 1 ounce. In other words, during Yom Tov day or Chol Hamoed or whatever it is, if I eat 2 ounces of cake or 2 ounces of bread, I have to make leishe basukah. But hypothetically, a person can have the following: a 10-course meal. You can have fish and salad, and they can have soup without matzah balls in it because that's mezainis, and then you can have prime rib. I'm not telling you all the things I like, just some of the things. Prime rib and with potatoes and then a few more vegetables, and then you can have a 3-course dessert of different types of ice cream or fruit or anything. You eat that meal, you cannot make a leishe basukah. You're not allowed to make a leishe basukah. Why? Because you're not obligated to eat that in the sukkah. There's no cake and there's no bread. But if you have, so the bottom line is, what happens if I go into the sukkah and I'm going to have mezainis before davening? Okay, good Jewish custom, Hasidic custom, I mean. So if you're having 2 ounces of cake, you make a leishe basukah. You don't make a leishe basukah. What happens if somebody ate breakfast, they washed for breakfast? Okay, and then 3-4 hours later, they're going to wash again in the same sukkah. You're going to eat lunch. And then 4 hours later, you're going to eat dinner. Again, wash for bread. So the dinner is like this. If I make a leishe basukah, and I know I'm coming back within an hour or two, I know I'm going to come back to the sukkah within an hour or two, and I come back within an hour or two, I do not make a nulei shebasukkah, no matter what I'm eating. I'm covered first with the first bracha. What happens if it's more than 2 hours? Then I have to make a leisha basukkah. So if I eat breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, okay, and then I wash and whatever, and then 12 o'clock I'm going to eat lunch, and I'm going to wash again, you have to make a new leisha basukkah. Even though it's in the same sukkah, but it's 4 hours, the distance is too much. If it's within an hour or two, you don't make a new leisha basukkah. If it's more than 2 hours, I have to make a new leisha basukkah. What happens if I eat in my sukkah enough to make a leisha basukkah, and then I'm going sukkah hopping? So I'm going to my friend's sukkah, and over there I'm going to eat cake. And I know I'm going to go eat cake there. Nevertheless, it's a different sukkah, you have to make a new leisha basukkah. Even if it's 5 minutes later. It's a different sukkah, I have to make a new leisha basukkah. If I eat 2 ounces of cake. If I go to the next guy's sukkah, eat another 2 ounces of cake, you're going to gain weight. But anyway, you're going to eat another 2 ounces of cake, you have to make another leisha basukkah. If I'm just going to go have fruit by somebody else, then I can't make a leisha basukkah anyway. But now there's another interesting thing. What happens, I ate breakfast or dinner, whatever it is. I made a leisha basukkah. I'm done eating. I'm going out of the sukkah, and in my mind, I'm not coming back for a while. For 5 hours. My mind is I'm done. All of a sudden, you walk into the house, the bell rings, your friend Yankel came, okay, let's go for bringing in the sukkah. So now you're going to have more cake or more bread. The fact that when you left the sukkah, you thought you're done, that finishes the first leisha basukkah. Now you're starting again even 5 minutes later. But you didn't think you're going to go eat again. You have to make a new leisha basukkah. What happens if somebody was sitting in the sukkah, they were eating, and they realized, oh yeah, I didn't make a leisha basukkah. In the middle of the meal, they realized they're supposed to make because they are eating bread or cake or whatever. And they realized, oh yeah, I didn't make a leisha basukkah. So the din is, as long as you're still sitting in the sukkah, it's one continuation, and you can make a leisha basukkah even if you're not going to eat anything more. Even if you're not going to be eating anything more, the fact that you are still sitting in the sukkah, it's one continuation. You can still make a leisha basukkah. Okay, so again, the laws of sukkah, the first 2 nights you must eat in the sukkah. Anytime you eat 2 ounces of bread or cake, you have to eat in the sukkah, make a leisha basukkah. Again, we mentioned before, Chabad custom is that you never eat anything out of the sukkah, even if it's pouring rain. I remember one year the Rebbe verbrengt, in New York it rains a lot, sukkahs. The Rebbe came out to verbreng on sukkahs, it was pouring. The Rebbe walked into the sukkah, he took off his coat in the sukkah, and he told all the old chassidim around to take off your coats. And the Rebbe verbrengt for hours, and then he gave Kerishal Bracha, and it was the water from the schach was dripping everybody's shirts. We were bachrim then. Everybody's shirts turned orange and yellow and pink and crazy colors. The Rebbe verbrengt, and he gave Kerishal Bracha. It was it was something. Our custom, we don't eat anything out of a sukkah. It says about the Rebbe Rashab, even if you had to take pills, medicine, and you take a drop of water for the pill, he would go into the sukkah to make sure he didn't do anything outside of the sukkah. Okay, so if you go to another sukkah, now another din is, by the way, and this is the Rebbe's opinion, that when you make havdalah in the sukkah, let's say Yom Tov is Tuesday and Wednesday night you're going to be making havdalah in the sukkah. The Rebbe holds that by havdalah you make a leisha basukkah, because the wine is a prominent mitzvah. Because the din is, if you establish a meal on wine, which is questionable exactly practically what that means, but if you have wine that you're making havdalah on, then the mitzvah makes it prominent, so it would demand a leisha basukah just by itself. Okay. By the way, you have to be careful. I mentioned this tonight to the men also. Sukkah has to be on your property. If somebody has property, let's say, right outside their house that doesn't belong to them, it belongs either to the city or to your neighbor or whatever, and you build a sukkah there, so it says in Shulchan Aruch, you cannot make a leisha basukah on that sukkah. V'di'eved, it's a kosher sukkah, but it's not your property. You're building a sukkah on land that doesn't belong to you. So you're not allowed to. And people have to be very careful with this. Sometimes you have property that's adjoining property. So if you get permission from your neighbor, let's say, okay, fine. But let's say your neighbor is out of town and you're going to build your sukkah on a little bit of his property without his permission, you can't make a leisha. The Rebbe says, you can't make a leisha sukkah on that sukkah because it has to be your property. And to extrapolate this a little bit, it's not such a simple thing, by the way. It might be different, but you know, when you have these sukkah mobiles and they park and an illegal red line, let's say, okay, it's city property, and you have a sukkah mobile on a red line, so you're basically parking a sukkah on a red line, which doesn't belong to you. So now the question is that a kosher sukkah or not? To be able to make a leisha basukah. The only question is, the sukkah is on the truck. The truck is on the stolen place. So the question is, does that invalidate the sukkah? I don't know now. But the bottom line is people should be careful that if you're building a sukkah, many people in their workplace, if they want to eat lunch, you put up a quick, portable sukkah or something like that. It has to be on your land. If it's not on your land, you're not allowed to make a leisha basukah on that piece of that sukkah. So it's a big issue. People must keep in mind. It's not so simple. Okay, Alav and benching we discussed. Okay, Sukkot is a time to have a lot of simcha. Okay, Samachta b'chagecha. It's a biblical time to have simcha. From all the three chagim, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, Sukkot is called Zman Simchaseinu. So Sukkot needs to be the biggest simcha more than anything else. Okay, that's as far as Sukkot goes. Now let's go into the by the way, there's another interesting question in halacha. If you have a sukkah mobile, okay, so the walls of the sukkah are good. There's two opinions. Is that sukkah mobile good only when it's not driving? Or even if it's driving, it's a good sukkah? So the world is lenient that even when, it's interesting, because if you have a sukkah mobile and you're going from place to place and guys that are on the sukkah mobile want to eat something in the sukkah, while it's driving, so some people say you can, some people say you could. Again, the custom is that we're makel, that we're lenient, and that even while it's driving, you can make a bracha leisha basukah. Okay, that's as far as sukkah goes, and then we'll discuss a little bit the lulav and esrog, and then if anybody has questions, you feel free to ask questions. Okay, now we have the four. What's called lulav and esrog. Lulav and esrog is a mitzvah. The first day, the biblical mitzvah is the first day of Yom Tov. The other 7 days or 6 days are really rabbinic. The first day of lulav and esrog, the first day of Sukkot, the Torah says the lakachtam lachem b'yom harishen. The Torah says the first day of Sukkot is the biblical mitzvah of doing lulav and esrog. The best place to bench lulav and esrog is in a sukkah. The best time to bench lulav and esrog is before halal. Okay, but bottom line is you can't run out of shul, it says in halacha. So we bench lulav and esrog in the morning. It says the first day of Sukkot, to show we're excited about the mitzvah, we're supposed to wake up early to do the mitzvah of lulav for the first time. Why, in fact, it says about the Baditchev, the Blavyitzchak Baditchev. The first night of Sukkot, he was literally so excited about doing the mitzvah, Lulav and Esrog. He was literally up a whole night, and he kept looking outside. When is it going to shine already, the sun, that he can do the mitzvah? Now, lechatchila, by the way, this is very important for people that work during Chol Hamoed. Lechatchila, the best time to do it is after sunrise. After sunrise. If a person has to go to work or whatever, so you're allowed to do it from dawn, which is approximately 72 minutes before sunrise. But the best time lechatchila to bench lulav and esrog is after sunrise. You're allowed to bench lulav and esrog a whole day. It's not dafka in the morning, the best time, obviously, there's a rule, Zerizim, Magdim, and mitzvah zealous people do mitzvahs earlier, but you can bench lulav and esrog a whole day. Now, when you bench lulav and esrog, let's just discuss, I'm not going into the kashrus of the lulav and the esrog and all that, but let me explain the way to do the mitzvah properly. The lulav and it has three things on it. We tie the adasim and aravis to the lulav. Technically, they don't have to be bound. You can have a loose lulav, loose adasim, loose aravis. But the reason why we tie it together, it says, by the way, in halacha, is because it looks nicer. Hidur mitzvah just beautifies the mitzvah. It's much nicer than having them separate. So, because the lulav has three things, and the esrog is separate, you have to hold the esrog in your other hand. So if you're a right-handed person, you hold the lulav in your right hand, you don't hold the esrog. You hold the lulav in your right hand, and then you make the bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvayis v'tzivanu al netilas lulav. Then you take the esrog in your left hand. When you start the shachion, the first day only we make a shachionu. So, on the first day I'm saying, you hold the lulav in your right hand when you make the bracha. Then when you finish the bracha, you're starting to say shachianu. So you take the esrog in your left hand, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shachianu v'kimanu v'gionu l'zman hazeh, and then you put them together. And you shake it. That is the mitzvah of lulav. Some people go in, the men especially go in all the directions, but halachically just putting the lulav and esrog together, you did the mitzvah 100%. If you're a left-handed person, then you hold the lulav in your left hand, because that's your right hand, if you're left-handed. You make the bracha on the netilas lulav, and then again, you take with the right hand the esrog the first day, and you start making the shachion, and then when you finish the bracha, you put it together and shake it. The other days of Yom Tif, you hold the lulav in your right hand, you make the bracha on netilas lulav, and then you just take the esrog and bring it over. Now you'll notice a lot of people, when they make the bracha, they hold the esrog upside down. And if you ever noticed that, Nusach Ashkenaz does that. Why is that? Why do they do that? We don't do that. We just don't take the esrog into it. There's a din in the Gemara. You have to make a bracha on a mitzvah before you do it. Once you did the mitzvah, how can you make a bracha that we're commanded? You're not commanded anymore. You did it. If somebody took a lulav and esrog and put it together without any bracha, they did the mitzvah. Once you did the mitzvah, you're not obligated. So how can you do the bracha, the v'tzivanu, with Hashem's name? So therefore, what do a lot of people do? They hold the esrog upside down. Because the din is, you're not fulfilling the obligation of lulav and esrog if you don't hold them the way they grow. In other words, somebody would take the lulav, hold it downward. Okay? Instead of upward, they would hold it downward. They would not be yetzer the mitzvah. Because the lulav grows this way. The esrog, the way it grows that way. So, what do people do? They hold the esrog upside down. So then, even though they're touching, they didn't do the mitzvah. Then when they finish the bracha, they put it right side up, and then they did the mitzvah. So instead of doing that, In Chabad, we just don't pick up the lulav and we don't pick up the esrig. We hold the lulav in the right hand. We finish the bracha either by shachianu or during the rest of the week. We just put them together and then we do the mitzvah that way. During Halal, there's also the concept of shaking the lulav. Shabbos, you don't take lulav and esrig on Shabbos, and not only that, because of that, they're completely muktzah. They're completely muktzah on Shabbos. You can't touch it at all. I'm not going to go into the dinim of what lulav and esrig, what's a kosher lulav, what's a kosher esrig. I just want to get to the practical dinim that everybody needs to know. Okay. People should be very careful, by the way, that sometimes they shake the lulav and esrog like this. You're gonna invalidate the lulav. You're gonna make the lulav split on top of that. There's no mitzvah to shake it like a maniac. You put it together, you give it a little shake, because otherwise you're gonna invalidate the lulav. You're gonna make it possible. Okay, for the duration, a few more dinim. The first day of Sukkot, which is Tuesday, you're not allowed to do any preparation for the second day. You can't set the table. You can't even wash the dishes on the first day for the second day. You're not allowed to do anything from one day to the next. The first day of Yom Tov is biblical. Second day is rabbinic. The first day is holier than the second day. So you're not allowed to prepare anything from the first day to the second day. So therefore, you cannot wash dishes from the first day to the second day. You're not allowed to prepare any cooking. You can't set the table. You can't do anything really until, again, LA time would be 7:12, which is an hour after Lichbenchen. And then, you start cooking or preparing for whatever somebody needs to do for the second night. But you can't do anything like that for the duration of, during the first day for the second day. Another thing about Sukkot is every day of Sukkot we say complete halal. So starting from Sukkot, there's actually 7 days of Sukkot and then Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah. So we're actually saying 9 days of halal in a row. And then if you say halal after davening, chitas, then the day after Simchas Torah is Chav Daled. So again, you're saying Tilim, like we did today, the halal in the Tilim. But every day of Sukkot we say complete halal. Not like Pesach, Chol HaMoed, we say half halal, and the last days of Pesach we say half halal. Over here on Sukkot, every day you say the complete halal with the lulav and esrig, and then after halal you do a shyness, you go around the bima with the lulav and the esrig, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's as far as the first days of Sukkot are concerned. As far as the last days of Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, again, we make a shachianu, because it's separate Yom Tov, not like the last days of Pesach, where it's not a separate Yom Tov. We do not make shachianu. But Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, we make a shachianu by candlelighting and by kiddush. I just want to caution people. A lot of times, in Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, you're in shul and there's dancing and all that stuff, and many times women forget to ben shlicht, especially the night of Simchas Torah. It's not a good idea to forget. Just make sure that with all the festivities going on, you don't forget to ben shlicht, because if you're not going to ben shlicht, it's going to be a pretty big problem. Okay, we don't say we don't put on tefillin Chol HaMoed. That's more and more the Chassidim for sure don't. Even now the Litvish also are not putting on, more and more of them are not putting on tefillin during Chol HaMoed. The reason for that is the same reason why we don't wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Nowhere in the Chumash does it say you don't wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. But it says Jews need to have two signs. It's called eis. Tefillin is, it says in Shema, eis al yadecha, a sign on your hand. Shabbos is an os, also a sign. Ki osi beini ubeini b'nei, so it's a sign. So therefore, because you have the ice of Shabbos, you don't need the ice of tefillin. Yom Tov is like Shabbos. You don't, because it's ice, it's also a sign, so you don't need tefillin. Now there's a big argument in Poskim, Chol HaMoed, is it Chol or is it Moed? In other words, is Chol HaMoed also the sign? Is it also a sign, or it's not the sign? So many people, again, it's getting less and less, because more people are adopting the minhag of not wearing tefillin during Chol HaMoed. But some people say, no, it's not a proper sign. Chol HaMoed, it's not Yom Tov, it's Chol, But, so they'll put on tefillin without a bracha, but they'll take it off before Hallel. Chassidic world, and many people, we don't put on tefillin at all Chol HaMoed, because Chol HaMoed is Yom Tov. In fact, in halachic it says, Chol HaMoed, you're supposed to wear Shabbos clothing. It's more of a Yom Tov. Every day you're supposed to eat meat. There's drink wine, by the way. It's an halacha every day of Chol HaMoed to drink wine and meat. Chol HaMoed, people should avoid shopping for clothing. I'm talking about for food. People should spend the time, this is what it says in halacha, spending time with family. They shouldn't be running all over the place and doing everything they shouldn't be doing. Okay, now as far as the last days of Yom Tov, the last days of Yom Tov, Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, are the counterpart of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, we discussed already, are serious times. Not depressing times, serious times. Sukkot, Zman Simchas Seinu. Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, for sure, it's time of joy. So it says, the previous Rebbe wrote, by Rosh Hashanah, he wrote a letter to the Bachrim, and he writes in the letter, and this applies to all people, that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, you should occupy yourself non-stop Tillim. Non-stop Tillim. Whenever there's a free moment, you say Tillim. The same thing in the Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah, the previous Rebbe writes, the 48 hours of Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah should be utilized every minute to Simcha, dancing and dancing and doing all those things, because it's the counterpart of Rosh Hashanah. In fact, there was a story when the Rebbe wasn't Rebbe yet, but in 770, the previous Rebbe was living upstairs, he wasn't 12. And the doctors asked that they should cut out they didn't have the downstairs shul like we have today, but they asked that the Chassidim shouldn't make so much noise and dancing because it was disturbing the previous Rebbe. So our Rebbe, that's what Chassidim say. Our Rebbe, what did he do? He took off his shoes and was dancing in his socks non-stop, not to make noise, but he kept dancing. The shoes, he took off his shoes not to make noise, but he kept dancing in a way of the Simchas Torah. So people should utilize the day of Simchas Torah. By the way, one more thing, from Erev Yom Kippur until the end of Tishrei, there is no Tachnun. The Mincha before Erev Yom Kippur, there is Tachnun. Just like Erev Rosh Hashanah, there is no Tachnun. But the Mincha before Erev Rosh Hashanah, there is Tachnun. So let's say this year, Erev Rosh Hashanah is Monday morning there's no Tachnun. But Sunday Mincha there is. Yom Kippur this year is Thursday, Erev Yom Kippur is Wednesday there's no Tachnun or Avinu Malkeinu, but Tuesday Mincha we do say Tachnun, because the Yom Tov actually begins in the morning. Does anybody have any questions? Because I basically covered everything that we're in a nutshell able to cover. If anybody has any questions, please speak your mind, or else we'll wish everybody a good Yom Tov. No questions. Okay. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last class until after Tishrei. Simchas Torah ends Wednesday night. The following Monday will be at class at 8 o'clock. Monday is in person and on Zoom. Wednesday will probably only be on Zoom. That's starting after Yom Tov, the class will be from 8 to 9. Until then, everybody should have Ksiv Chsima Teva, Lashon Teva Mesuka. We should have an abundance of Hatzlach and Gesund and Parnas and Nachem. Should have your Mashiach. And everybody should be blessed with all good things in an abundance. Okay, so have a good Yom Tov, a good Yod.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're going to be in Beis Betzalel, yeah?
Yes, Rabbi. For sure. Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Very good.
I really like it there. I really like Rabbi Levin and Rabbi
Yeah.
Levin. They're very kind and consistent. Thank you, Rabbi. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.